Most cults do not really consider law enforcement to be their friends. Most cults consider law enforcement and anything that's associated with the state that's trying to conduct oversight to be an arch enemy.
Everything outside of the world of the cult is evil, bad. You know, everybody's got different words for it, but that includes government agencies, that includes child protective services, that includes everybody, because they're outsiders. Anything that brings outside agencies inside the Scientology world to check to make sure that Scientology is doing the right thing is seen as an attack. So something as innocuous as a welfare check is seen as an attempt to bring down Scientology.
Were you guys ever trained how to speak to authorities if they ever got onto the base?
Absolutely.
Everybody on that base has to do a course.
It's called the INT base security and PR course. And that's the very first thing you do when you get there.
As soon as you arrive.
And what is that?
It basically tells you how to lie to the authorities
It
and
trains
tell the
you
locals.
what the story is. So you say, I work at Golden Era Productions, we make movies for Scientology.
Volunteer no information that is beyond what you're actually asked for, and when you're asked, answer in generalities.
You work in paradise and you're wonderfully happy, and that's the beginning and the end of the story.
And you would only do things like write a letter, and they're called good roads, fair weather letters, so that they don't file missing persons, reports on you, or, go to the media because they haven't heard from their children or something like that.
So the shore story is basically the bullshit you're told to tell law enforcement about something that happened. A crime, a rape, a beating, Scientology. A death. And so you're basically told by your seniors in Scientology what you're going to say to the FBI, what you're going to say to the police, what you're going to say to Child Protective Services if they show up.
We'd been on rice and beans for 6 months. So I think I'm having an appendicitis attack. They're driving me to the hospital. As I'm writhing in pain in the back seat, I'm not to talk about the fact that we've been on rice and beans for 6 months.
So they're prepping you.
What they find out, though, is that my guts basically had twisted over into a knot. And at the hospital, they're like, what kind of stress is she under? I'm not under any stress, I just do my job. But I was told to lie the whole time.
My son was born under 3 pounds. Of course, they thought he was a crack baby. I'd been on the RPF pregnant, and I was going to do anything I could to protect the church and not say, well, I've been in this prison camp and, no neonatal care at all. And so, but he'll be fine.
Right.
And, it was awful. Right. So, but always to cover the organization to make sure they didn't look bad under whatever circumstances.
Whenever a situation occurs that involves police or law enforcement or something that could potentially get into the media, this is what's known as a short flap. Everything is collected up, and everybody that knows about it is collected up, and they are all put on clampdown.
They just monitor it from a PR aspect to make sure that police get the questions they need and it gets shut down and no more questions are asked and it goes away and nobody else hears about it.
One day, a man was reported dead who had been on the purification rundown, which is the sauna detoxification program. I ordered an investigation immediately. I was all over this. Within about 15 minutes of those orders being sent, somebody from the Office of Special Affairs came down and said, I want all telex traffic written, anything you have on this right now, give it all to me immediately and at once, You have no idea how much trouble you've caused me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? This guy's dead. We need to do something about this. And she said, nope, there's not going to be any investigation. There's not going to be any communication about this in any way. And we never, ever were allowed to speak about that death ever again.
I was auditing a guy on a ship, an engineer, and he obviously had mental problems, and he ended up committing suicide. I told like the highest person on the ship, and she's like, I wish he had gone to the hotel and killed himself in the hotel, because then we wouldn't have the bad PR. So the highest executives on the ship decided to sail the ship to Curacao with his dead body lying on the shower floor.
Just so that Scientology could avoid
Because we had better PR. The best PR for Scientology is in Curacao.
I see.
So we got to Curacao, and the port captain contacted whoever ashore, and his body was removed, not through like the normal way. It was removed through where we do stores parties, where all the food comes in a black bag so that nobody could see it.
Wow.
And I, as his counselor, had to go through his counseling folder and black out anything with a black marker that would incriminate Scientology, which I did do.
We are taught the outside world is evil, and so as a young child, you think of the outside world as a very dangerous place.
It is an enclosed world, and that world is dictated by the policies of L. Ron Hubbard, and those policies make paramount, always paramount, the well-being of Scientology, not the well-being of any individual. Within that bubble, everybody is in agreement. And that agreement doesn't match with what society believes is normal, or what society believes is the things that should and shouldn't be done, or the reports that should be made, or how a rape victim should be treated, or how a rapist should be treated.
Yeah, one of the things that L. Ron Hubbard did was to make Scientology extraordinarily self-serving. And one of his teachings is that the worst thing you could do to a person is to send them to a prison. A non-Scientology prison, because that would destroy them.
Every Scientologist truly believes if you put them in the hands of the psych-infested law enforcement and the judicial system, they are being doomed to an eternity of black hellhole. That only by putting them into the hands of Scientology is there any hope that that person will be saved. To turn someone over to law enforcement is a horrific crime. And
these words are used. Crimes, high crimes.
So we deal with everything internally. If something happens that would ordinarily be reported to law enforcement, it gets reported to OSA, the internal police force of Scientology.
Your only recourse is to go to Scientology.